Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that you're better than non-binary when it comes to your sweetener. You're like pan sweetener. You don't necessarily have a choice. You'll use whatever sweetener's in front of you. I'm just mind blown at how sweet you really are, because you roll in with four sweeteners, and generally four sweeteners. I don't have the packets in front of me, but I think that's like equivalent of 8 teaspoons of sugar. So you're a sweet dude.
I don't even believe you. Those are small packets, bro. Those are
But it's
small
chemical.
packets.
It's the difference between, like, sugar granules are pretty big. They're pretty big. In order to get the sweet that you need, you would be dropping in like 8 teaspoons of sugar into your teaspoon. Can I give a perceptual thing that's kind of strange here, right? When we like in the culinary field, and I'm not trying to bring you back. I'm not looking to do any sort of win here, but often when we when we talk about the teaspoon, it's not the same. Like, if you have a little bit of a culinary background, right, it's different than, I think, like when you're going and buying your cutlery from the store, right? So it's a different measure. So a teaspoon typically is 5 mils. It's not much. That's really teeny tiny. Tablespoon is like 15 mils. So normally you're measuring this thing by volume. That's right. That's how you can visually see how much you're getting. It's not a by weight. So when I say, like, you're getting in 8 teaspoons of sugar, like a teaspoon measurement is probably like, if you could make a cup out of your baby finger, like just the tip, that's about a teaspoon. Tablespoon is, around, if you could make a cup out of your thumb, that's a tablespoon. So the fact that one of those packets is like double what the measurement in sugar would be, it's just a volume measurement. But I want to come back to, I appreciate the fact that you'll lose whatever sweetener's in front of you. Bless you. You're not the person that's like, where's my NutraSweet, yo? Gotta have some, like, you're not rolling up and saying that your coffee's going to be ruined by it. And I also appreciate, you sharing your sweet side with me. I appreciate that. 8 sweetener, 8 times the sweetener. You're 8 times sweeter than me, because I tend to roll bitter. Like, I actually split. Here's the thing. It's funny. Oh, I love this. I typically, when I make a coffee, if I have my coffee black, which I'll do that, I'll use half of a packet of Splenda. Half of one. So I'm like dropping in 1 teaspoon of sugar, and it almost doesn't matter the size. Like, this is a pretty big, no marketing here, but like this, I would fill with black coffee and put half a teaspoon of Splenda, half a packet of Splenda. I'm not as sweet as you. That's bitter, and I love it. but I digressed you.
You digressed me hard, bro. I can't even hard. So, okay.
You're talking about discovering the coffee drinker in you.
The Starbucks coffee. Mm-hmm. I'm dropping it. I know they don't sponsor us, but I have to tell you where it came from. The Starbucks coffee drinker in me was by mistake. Okay, so, but I feel as though now you've given the audience this like jaded view of me and coffee, because let me tell you something. First of all, I'm a coffee noob. That's number one. So number two, when I jumped into it 2 years ago at 5:30 in the morning at a hockey tournament, I needed for it not to taste like shit. So
it's a strong memory for you. I love it.
Yeah, because I remember it was awesome, because I started with 2 packets of whatever was there that wasn't sugar. Mm-hmm. And I think you and I have landed on it was either Splenda or what's the other one?
Well, we ran through the colors. So the packet colors: pink typically is NutraSweet. Okay. Blue is Equal. Yellow, Splenda, typically. Like a white pack with any random kind of writing on it is probably straight up sugar. Although sometimes you'll see green I think green and white packets. That's stevia, plant-based sweetener. Everything else, is going to turn you into the Incredible Hulk. Like you're getting your gamma rays because it's all super chemical. There you go. Hulk smash coffee edu. Stevia, plant-based. And then you've got like the brown packets. Like I was saying, like this parchment paper that I use, the brown packets. I think it's made to look more natural. It's the raw sugar or the demerara sugar. It's like the big granules of sugar that look like a packet of dirt, right? It's like kind of got that brownie kind of like dirty look, I get. And then I feel like I'm throwing shame on it. I actually like that granulated sugar. I do. Yeah. I like the demerara sugar. I also like brown sugar as well, which is like regular sugar mixed with molasses. I actually really like brown sugar in my coffee. So, but I'm a bitter guy.
So is that at that 5:30 a.m. I needed something. And I think what I did was I put 2 in, tasted it, and was like, nah. Put another 2 in, was like, okay, I can live with this. And what was funny was I had to double cup it. It was so hot. And then my son is like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting coffee. He's like, you don't drink coffee. I'm like, it's 5:30 in the morning and we're on our way to hockey in the middle of the summer. I need to wake up. He's like, okay. So then I was drinking coffee that whole weekend from that machine. And then we leave for the tournament's over. We go home. And then the next month we go back to the tournament. We're staying at the same hotel. And I literally run into the friggin' hotel and just start making coffees. So here's where we are today. Okay. Here's where we are today. When I drink, I guess, I don't even know if this counts. When I drink coffee today, it's iced. I like iced coffee. So, and I'm starting to realize, you're going to appreciate this. I'm starting to enjoy some of the bitterness. So for example, so I like my iced coffee. And my wife and I had this really fun experience a few weeks ago. We drove to Stratford, which is about 30 to 40 minutes away from Waterloo.
I love Stratford.
Oh yeah, I've been there several times. Stratford, oh my God, Stratford, we laugh because my boss, PG, he's from Stratford. So I always joke with him that the sign when you enter Stratford should say Stratford, home of Paul Gladding, the Ontario Pork Congress, and Justin Bieber. So Justin should never be first. It should always be Paul first. But anyway, we go to Stratford because my wife ordered this really cool swinging cage seat chair for the patio from Canadian Tire. Stratford had one. So as we're pulling into the Canadian Tire in Stratford, my wife says to me, hey, when we're done, can we go to we're going to McDonald's to get like a summer drink. I'm like, right on, I'm in. So we get the thing, cross the street to McDonald's, and she's like, what are you getting? I'm like, I think I'm getting an iced coffee. Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, okay. So I order the iced coffee, and they're like, do you want a pump of this and a pump of? I'm like, no, just give it to me the way it is. Like, however you do it, just give it to me. They gave it to me, took a couple of sips, and it wasn't sweet at all. Like there was a hint of something in there that cut some of the bitterness, but it wasn't Roland style of fake sugar, not by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. My wife's like, do you like it? I'm like, yeah. She goes, isn't it bitter? I'm like, there was enough, whatever they do to it normally, there was enough to keep me drinking more. So I can appreciate the bitterness, but I'm not a black coffee person. No way. That would kill me.
I gotta hit you hard. Next time you go to Stratford, you gotta go to Balzac's. That's a local. They make a good cup. Yeah, that's I can throw down if I don't know PG's listening or anyone out there in Stratfordville. Every time we've gone there, and we tend to go to Stratford for the family will go and see a show, like a play. We like going there for that. There's also, I gotta find there's a great diner and it's actually just, I think it's just up. I can't orientate myself as to what's northeast, west, south. However, where we normally park, or where we have parked, it's close to Balzac's. It's also there's a corner there. I'll search it up before we get out of here. There's a diner in Stratford that's awesome. It's really, really good. And then we've walked and we've gotten coffees at Balzac's, and then there's a lot of really great shops there that we like to go check out. Independent shop. It's cool to walk the downtown and hit the independent shops. There's also the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Shop downtown. Yeah, that's a big thumbs up. Like they I know it's franchised, but their chocolate, well, we'll tap into sort of like yours and mine, but I think I've kind of projected onto you when we've gone and done our food crawls in the past. The decoded, what do we call it? Decoded feed. Oh, that almost works. Decoded feed. One of my rules is I like to know the families in the kitchen, right? Someone that there's family that's there, and it's a family business. So Rocky Mountain, I'm sure it could be owned by a family, but it's also, those recipes they're corporate, but the stuff's good there. And I think they have like a sculpture of a bear out front that's pretty cool. Wooden bear? I don't know. Yeah, so Balzac's, there's the diner near Balzac's, Rocky Mountain. There's a cool toy store there too, independent toy store. We one time, Karen and I, we went on a date day, and we went there. We went and saw a show, saw Fiddler on the Roof there, and then we rented one of those paddle boats, and I guess it's the Avon. I think that's the river that's there. I think it's actually called the Avon. Scary. The swans there are scary. Yeah, we were kind of we were harassed, but they that's their town. That's their town. We're on their turf. But yeah, we were out on the paddle boat. Weather started rolling in. We made bad choices. We went too far. I think we went beyond the line we were supposed to. We're trying to hustle back, and we're being attacked by geese and swans. It's like they're security guards. Coffee, Balzac, Starbucks.
But bitter. Here we go. I don't think I'm walking into a Balzac's to get a coffee. Unfortunately, I'm not at that stage yet.
They have other things too. They do. They have other things, and I think I'll counter, dude. I think you would. I'm going to credit you. I think you would, because you're getting your. This wasn't based on looking for bitter coffee. This is just based on the fact that you got local kind of it's I think a local business. It's just a good way to support. It's kind of a known business in Stratford as well. So a little bit of history there.
I got to throw down the Rio Thompson's chocolate.
What's that?
It's they make this thing called a mint smoothie, and it's delicious. You've never tried Rio Thompson chocolate?
Mm-mm.
It is very popular around here, and its headquarters is in Stratford. And then there's this really awesome chocolate store down the street from the main one, where the guy who owns the one, I'll find the name. The guy who owns the one down the street, he was trained at Rio Thompson. So he was trained there, and then he opened up his own place. We've had that chocolate as well. Delicious. I mean, who's kidding? Chocolate, I eat chocolate no matter. I don't discriminate when it comes to chocolate. If you tell me there's a chocolatier down the street, I'm going. Right? Well, I have to throw in, on the way to Stratford and on the way back home, there's a little town called Shakespeare, and Shakespeare Pies is there, and they make amazing pies, sweet and savory. So going to Stratford for me is awesome. If somebody says, let's go to Stratford, I'm like, okay, we're taking this route so I can hit the pie store on the way back. And then when we're in Stratford, we're going to have to hit some chocolate. So I guess I digress as well. We're in Stratford. We're at the Canadian Tire. We're parked in the spot where you wait to get your curbside pickup. I take a picture of the Canadian Tire, and then I message PG, and I'm like, bro, I'm in your hometown. I'm at the CT in your hometown, which is like everybody's like probably who cares, but it's just fun. And then my other buddy Glitzy, that's not really his name, but that's what I'm going to call him. His son played hockey with Will the last 2 years, and they live in Shakespeare. So I'm like, bro, I'm in your town. But it was Sunday. Shakespeare Pies is closed on Sunday, so I didn't get my pie. Um, it's funny because then they write back to like, what are you doing in Stratford? Like, why would you be in Stratford? I'm like, Canadian Tire, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, long story short, it's fossil phrase.
It
Long
all
story
works.
short, I discovered coffee, in a different kind of way a couple of years ago at a hockey tournament in the summer when I needed something to wake me up. And there was something about the smell of the Starbucks coffee. I know there's Team Tim Hortons, there's Team McDonald's, there's Team Starbucks, but there's just something about the Starbucks coffee that hit me right where I needed to. And then the McDonald's iced coffee, I'm in. Like I got no problem dropping $1 for a medium size. It hit me. It hit me. It was cold. It had. It was bitter enough that it didn't turn me off. Um, I do carry some fake sugar in the car for when for when I because it's easier for me to control. Like I c- I could order. I guess the other day. Oh my god! The other day I woke up and I was craving the Starbucks coffee, and I almost went to Starbucks just down the street to get myself a black coffee, and I
Mm-hmm.
would put in my own sweetener. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. I don't even know what their coffee is. Like I don't even know what I don't know. I would just say to me, "Give me a regular black coffee." I don't even know. I know Americano this, and they got names, but I don't know what anything means.
I like the old man face you just used.
Oh, I use an old man
You use
face.
the old man's face, yeah, the old
Oh,
man's face. It's
like
it's this one when you're like, no, it's this one.
oh,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know what they call it. There's a coffee. I just want to call. Yeah, it's the old man face.
Our listeners,
Black regular coffee. If you just said if you want a regular coffee, they'd probably just give you the whatever they have brewed. Yeah.
okay, we got some listeners. I'd love it if you'd use the chat to tell us about your coffee. If you drink coffee, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm typically a chai guy, chai tea. But here's the thing. I was telling Chris this about Chris and I. Well, Chris is going to drop. I hope he does the more formal part of this. But before we started, Chris and I were talking about the things we do and the little hits of reward that we get from what we're doing that is just enough to bring us back for more. Okay, I'm going to let Chris jump into it because it's his TED talk. But
Easy. Easy.
sorry. In September was your friggin' TED talk, and I hope we get to that at some point. But anyway, um, so the things that bring you back for more. So all this remote learning from home, my family started doing things to set ourselves up that we had something to look forward to every day. And Wednesdays was Starbucks day. And so on Wednesday mornings, my wife would go to Starbucks with my youngest, and they would get the family each our beverage. And I discovered my go-to drink was an espresso frappuccino. And it was funny because I was telling Chris how it's been like customized to my liking. So
Can I do a food? Can I do a food snob? Jump in on that. Just a coffee
I
food snob.
can you just let me finish the customization?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, I would I would get the espresso frappuccino with no whipped cream, and I would get it with oat milk, and I would get it with my I think my wife asked for 3 pumps of sugar-free vanilla, and whatever they do to it normally other than that, and it was just I loved it. Thank you for letting me speak, Christopher.
Oh, uh, espresso.
Mm, thank you,
Espresso.
espresso.
Espresso. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's no KRC in there.
Got it. See, it's the newbie in me, but it's good. I'm learning
No, you know what though? It's
espresso.
espresso. Yeah. It feels better to say too, doesn't it?
It
Like
does.
say the original, say the one that you did.
Espresso.
Yeah.
Espresso.
Now
Espresso.
do the espresso.
So
Yeah.
I think this could be the summer of coffee for me.
Mm,
I think it could be, and I think I could end the summer of maybe iced coffee because I really do like the idea of cold coffee. And then even my wife said to me, maybe you need to try these nitro. The Starbucks has this nitro brew
jeez.
thing. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm down. I mean, my wife's just, it's hilarious because over the years as teachers, we've gotten Starbucks gift cards, but we were never Starbucks people. And then we tried it one day and now it's like it's on. Like I remember going around the house with my wife, finding all the Starbucks gift cards that we've gotten over the years. There's a mountain of them, but Starbucks is pricey, bro. They like to make
It
their
is.
money. So
It is.
those cards we're flying through those cards pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the truth. It is a it's often people, well, it used to be, the trend used to be, there was a trend where people were talking about how much more financially solvent they'd become by stopping smoking, and they did this like come to awareness kind of aha moment of, I was a pack a day smoker, and each pack of smokes cost me $8, so on the week that's like $56, and then calculate that by 52, it's like $4,000 or whatever, and then now I take that $4,000, I put it into a GIC, and I'm going to retire, right? Like that was kind of like a story about smoking. I feel like you could do almost the exact same story but about Starbucks. And it's I love that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about how, so where I drive, my commute to work passes very conveniently coffee shops like that. Like, there's a Tim's. Where I work, the actual town, there's no Starbucks. If you go into town, there's a really great I want to mention Joe's Diner. Stratford, Joe's Diner. That's where we went. We were gonna go to another one called Madeline's, just because my daughter's name is Madeline. But Joe's Diner is where we went to, and then after that we would go to Balzac's for coffee. So, props to Joe's Diner. Good food there. So yeah, I used to drive past these coffee shops on the way to work, and I'm like, yeah, I just had a coffee before I left home. But then I would say to myself, this is what we started talking about, this whole ludic. Actually, I don't know if it's ludic or ludich loop, that I just had a coffee before I left the house. But there's something super awesome about having a coffee from a takeout coffee. And then what gets connected into it, and this is, I think, how we sort of superimpose the emotionality on, like, the emotions onto it. You know what? I haven't got a coffee for my buddy Sue in a long time, so I'm going to get her a coffee too, which then reinforces the fact that I need a coffee. So it's not just about me getting the coffee for me, which of course it is about that ultimately. You sort of justify it that somebody else would really appreciate it. And then you arrive with the coffee and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you for remembering me. And I keep notes on my phone that's one of the things. I actually do have a note in there about different people's coffee. It becomes a thing. So if I know I'm going to be in someone's space, I can just show up with it. I don't even have to ask. So it's that reinforcement of the addiction on coffee. And, going back to that ludic loop thing, it's just enough of a reward to keep you coming back, right? Just enough of a reward.
And then you and I talked about how that kind of rolled into this school year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to get too far into that, but I do want to hit upon your spoken word poetry that you wrote and posted on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
called In September. And
Mm-hmm.
you know what, dude? I've read lots of your poetry. Um, I know that you're into writing that stuff. That's what you do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's part of you at the moment. But when I watched it,
Oh, being able to see me recite it.
to see you say and to hear you say it,
Mm-hmm.
it was a whole other level. I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to think. Listen, I do read a lot of your stuff because you're my friend. right? So if you were just some Joe and you kept posting stuff about poetry, I might just scroll by, right? But
Mhm.
we're buddies. Um, and so I read the stuff you drop. I take a look, I read it. Um, I'm honored to say that one of your poems was about my
Mhm.
son's experience with me tying skates, which is kind of cool. Um, and so obviously you've never posted it to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've never posted one of your poems with you reciting it in a YouTube video. I don't believe you've done that before.
I haven't. I have a few that I've put on. Is it Anchor? What's
Okay.
the? Yeah, I do have words keep wolves at bay. Like I created a feed there, and I have read some of them, and just kind of cross posted that and put it back to my kind of like creative personal professional blog. But you're right, I haven't done. This is the first. This is the first that I've posted up as a a full length piece, I guess. And it's actually technically it's I can there's the part of the backstory to this. There's a couple different entry points to it. I wish I could remember. I could do this. The Unprofessional Development Podcast DM'd me, DM'd me because the Ed podcast, Shane mentioned to them that I write poetry. So tomorrow, the the Unprofessional Development Podcast is having something called an EduPodlooza, and the person there asked me. Actually, I'm not even sure what the person's name is. It might be Matt. It might be Matt. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what the person's name is. We've just been DMing together. And they said, would you put a piece in for it? I guess they're going to string it together. So that was a few weeks back. And I thought, okay, here's an opportunity to write. Well, I knew I wanted to write a piece about the school year because I felt like that was really accessible. Props to Wally Shaw on Twitter. Wally Shaw put out a great piece about kind of like hope and connectivity in the school year. So that was a little bit in my background too. There was another piece as well that came out, I think more in May, called Noise. I forget the writer. It was a great piece on YouTube talking about what we miss about the school spaces that we're in. And finally, the last kind of part to this was I'd done a bunch of those pieces for the In September, kind of reflecting like shorter pieces that I've been posting up on Insta, and sometimes they pop up on Twitter as well. And those ones, like, those are a little bit of the dark. Like they're not there. There isn't. It's just for me. It's what I see when I look directly at my experience. I don't lift it. I don't sort of like launch it. I just kind of say, here's what I see in front of me, and it's a little bit like poetic journaling, I guess. So I've had a couple people reach out to me for those pieces, the shorter pieces that I post up on Insta. Mostly they feed over to Facebook as well, asking me if I'm okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that.
I can see that.
Totally, dude. I mean, yeah, like some of those talking about, like there's a whole lot of stuff there: fear, sadness, longing, nostalgia, mortality. Like I play with a lot of those. I've played, and I don't. I never felt like I was playing in a disrespectful way. But again, I was writing, trying to capture exactly what I was thinking. Once in a while, it was a kind of a composite of what I'm thinking and what I had sort of seen other people kind of touching on. Had some positive feedback, had some connected feedback, had some like thankful feedback, lots of great little bits of feedback. One of the pieces of feedback though was that, and this kind of came out of both my spouse, who has said, wow, like some of this stuff is pretty you go dark. Another person, Sarah Vitelli, she reached out. She's like, hey dude, are you okay? And and it's we talked about this. We podcast, I'm good, but I'm not okay, kind of a thing. Like you're sort of wrestling through, you're working it through, you're figuring out your ludic loops. Like what is the thing that just sort of lights me up, that gets me back into sort of connected with my day again. But I pushed back and I said, yeah, I'm good. I'm just kind of reflecting in public, as you and I do most Saturdays, decoding and kind of connecting what our week was about, a little bit about being a dad, a little bit about being a teacher, a little about just being a human. So what I wanted to do with this piece is, of course, I was not about to look away from the year, and I wanted to include I wanted to include the elements of the year that were most apparent to me, that were most connected to my experience. I felt like writing to that would be best. And then I thought I have to find a way to include the hope for moving forward. And I'm not, in the piece, I don't suggest a way out. Like there's not that type of hope in the piece, but I felt giving gratitude offered the hope, because I felt it kind of like formally acknowledged the contributors, the people, the difference makers that I saw from where I was sort of observing this past year. I think one of my pieces in September addressed it. Like, I think in September, just to plug my own pieces, it'll be 544 days that we've had to work through, work with, be confronted by, suffer with, exist adjacent to, in some cases, exist in other cases. I think the number is 544 days. And that number became really powerful to me, because that's something that you say a year, and there's so much that disappears if you say a year and a half. You say 1.5 years, there's a lot that just kind of, but you disaggregate it and say 544 days, and you can start to account for some of the steps that you took through that day. And some of the steps that, the small steps that were day to day, where you were working just day to day, where you were just day to day. I could have done it by hours, but then it becomes kind of abstract. Like that number gets too big. There was just something about 544 that made it seem like you could hold it in your head and sort of look at it and do sort of an assessment of where you were along those 544 days. So that's the backstory. And then this event is going up tomorrow on Edupalooza. The piece is indulgent, dude. It's like double the length that it should be for a spoken word piece. Spoken word pieces should be 3 minutes. And then you get hit with, if you're doing it in competition, you start getting hit with penalties the longer you go. So basically this piece would have to either be broken in two, or I would just have to stand up there and say, yo, this is what I'm going to say for the next 6 minutes. Come along for the ride. I don't care about the points. And it's funny. The funny thing about that is that one of the going phrases within spoken word community is that the point of the piece is not the points. It's the poetry. Like that's something that almost at every spoken word event you go to, whoever's the MC will kind of even get the crowd once they figure out who's the judges. Like they pick randoms volunteer from the crowd. Typically you'll get X number of votes on it, and then they drop your lowest score and your highest score, and then the middle numbers become your score. And then they also get the crowd at the end to say, remember, the point of spoken word poetry, the point of poetry is not the points. The point of poetry is the poetry. So I'd be coming out with 0 points, but feeling like I got my poetry out. So that's the whole backstory.
And there's another TED Talk. So
Zing.
I'd like some time to talk about TED Talks and how I can't watch them anymore. I'll see a great topic and I look, it's 23 minutes. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not giving that 23 minutes. But anyway, that's a whole other, we're going to have to talk about that some other time. I didn't even know that there were spoken word competitions and things of that nature. This is not my wheelhouse. But I will say, and this is cool, I can learn more about it. I will say that I watched and listened to your in September spoken word piece while I was out on my walk last night. And I need to listen to it at least 3 or 4 more times because there was so much there. Because I think I told you this. I sent you a message after the first time I watched it or listened to it, because again, I'm walking, so I can't have my head down on my phone the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
As I listened to you talk and you hit upon, oh my, like tons of things, that common things that educators have experienced or can say that they've experienced this over the last 544 days. Well, it'll be 544 in September, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I would get fixated on a particular. There were some really cool things, which is why I appreciate you doing the video. I would see the reflection of your hand in your microphone. I would look around the room and pick out different things around you in that space that you sit and work in. And for me, it was a package deal. The things you were talking about, like, directly struck me in my core of who I am as an educator. And just I'm walking and I'm in awe, and I'm shaking my head in a little bit of disgust. Um, so I had like mixed emotions, and you can imagine it's kind of raining.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting my walk in, and I'm just feeling like I'm exhaling. I'm
Mm.
exhaling,
I
basically
like that.
after. And it's funny too, because so yesterday morning I wanted to go for my walk and get my air and feel the world around me. But when I woke up, I was like, I don't want to wake up yet. So I went back to sleep. I get home, we have dinner as a family, and I look to my family, I'm like, I'm going for a walk. And they're like, they think I'm nuts, right? Like, because all they see is rain, and they're like, you're gonna just walk in that? I'm like, it's more than just walking in the rain, but it's okay. They don't need to get that. And I'm out there and I'm exhaling. I'm exhaling the school year. I'm exhaling the first day that I've been back in the school building with the entire staff. Like, it was it was it was a lot to take in. It was
Mm-hmm.
satisfying to see and talk to people, but it was also overwhelming, because you can imagine this has been my environment since April. This sitting in this room, staring at this computer with faces staring back. This has been my classroom. And so I was exhaling all that. Um, and then you hit me with your in September, and I'm like, this guy's killing me with his art. Um, Very well done. I can make a clear connection to the things you say, the hopes and the experience of this last school year was just, it's history now. That's what I've been saying to people yesterday. It's history now. And we can look back and we can, in my opinion, we can be very thankful and very proud of what we did as teachers and principals to innovate, to break the mold, and to do what we needed to do to keep kids learning and to keep people safe. Now, if I don't want to go dark, but there's a whole slew of people above the principal level who I felt, now that history's been written, they didn't step up the way that they could have. They didn't. They didn't try to. They did. They were not successful. If they did try, they were not successful in changing how we look at school. And we had a great opportunity in this dark time to do that, and I don't feel it happened. I don't feel like anybody wanted to. Um, I feel like they just kept putting a band-aid over the cut, didn't clean the cut, didn't think about how to repair that skin in a way that would be better than just regular repair. Those are my feels now that this year's over. And I mean, we're not out of this yet. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and in Waterloo region where I live,
Hotspot, eh?
hotspot. So it's like, yeah, great. That's just great. Um,
I think it's for me, this is living history. We're not that. I think part of the, and this is some of the reflection I've done, even while I'm writing the piece, so that I'm not kind of getting distracted by my own drive to build out the story. Like I had to really focus to stay in the story that I wanted to tell, because there's another part to this, that this is living history. We don't enter into the only assurance, and it's a soft assurance right now that we have for September, is that we'll be walking back into schools. Now, I know some teachers were, especially elementary, they were in schools. They were in schools while we were doing this, and probably in schools more than secondary. I think secondaries kind of pivoted out while elementaries were still in the game, right? Like that's just the way that this rolled out. But this is living history. We haven't actually escaped anything. There's no clear, what's the word?
We're not out of the woods. We're still in it. It's just this year, with this year being over.
Yeah.
This school year, I think there was just all kinds of heroics on the part of parents, teachers. I like to include principals in there, even though, like, they, the people running the schools, no problem. The people running the schools, the day to day, it's incredible. Like when I think of, watching my wife do her work in the living room, and then after work, watching her stay at the table and prepare for the next day, and continuously go back to the table to tweak something, change something, communicate with someone. It's like, it was crazy when I think of what she did and how she did it. And then I think of my principal, and how, like, my principal was in his car driving from home to home, dropping stuff off, picking stuff up. Like, it became the norm. Like one day I was talking to my library technician, and I said, hey, the boss said I could borrow one of these computers to try something out. She's like, okay, is he just going to drive it to your house? Like, it just became, I'm like, no, give it to so-and-so. I'm going to see so-and-so on the weekend, and he'll give it to me. And they're like, okay. But it was just like, oh, is the boss driving it to your house? Because it just became normal that if the staff member or if a family needed something, the principal just jumped in his car and took it there. Which is like, to me, it's not abnormal, but it is in a way. Like, my boss is all about that. He was all about that. I know some principals, they would do it if they had to, but that's not their default. His default is to get in his car and to take it to you.
I loved it. That was one of those. That was when I in the piece. I there were places that I struggled with to find the hope, and I don't think it was because it wasn't there. Maybe it was because I hadn't witnessed it, but it also was how I sort of centered myself in the experience of this poem, like where I was drawing from. And when I hit upon, the way that I sort of saw, like the best way to articulate sort of like what the leaders and the doers did is, and I couldn't make it specifically about principals or administrators, let's say, but about the people that allowed us to sort of really get a different look at our limits. So these individuals that were willing to sort of take a risk like this, and like some of the early adopters, that were sort of understanding curbside delivery and understanding that the social physical distance doesn't mean absolute distance, and it doesn't necessarily mean isolation or abandonment. And the people that were playing with that along the way and still finding ways for us to come down from fear and see tactical safety. Like, how can we do this in a way? Because we came into this in a lot of ways just like shutting all the shit down. We're just like, we're not doing school this year. And then it slowly became, well, we're not going to do school how we used to do school. And then it became, well, here's how we're doing school now. So we found ways to kind of find stable platforms for us all to stand on and figure out what can we feel safe with, even though we were, as a system, as a family, as a community, hit with some things that really made us question. Well, a lot of people, like, I'm done with this career. Like they're saying stuff like that. Like I'm done. I'm done. So, and again, there's a little bit of that ludic loop, right? Either us finding it. You're dude. You're muted. Come on. Us finding the sort of like the sugar pack to sweeten it up a little bit. Someone handing it to us, say, "Hey, yo, I got some in my car. That coffee doesn't have to be so bitter. I can give you a quick sweetener." And this was the collaboration and the sharing that happened along the way. And we talked about this in a previous episode because there was a real turning point, at least in, let's say, digital spaces, where people were kind of like peeking out of their profiles, like, can I talk about how to do my job better right now? And then somebody like, yeah, get back, and they're like, they would hide away again, right? Like okay, too soon. Whatever you're following or followers, everyone still wanted to exist in the harm, which is fine. They wanted to exist in the challenge, which is fine. But there were individuals that were sort of peeking out, kind of opening up the shutters on their practice and saying, okay, this is an and. I'm scared, I'm sad, I'm freaking out, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm not well, and I still have to do something with my job. Anybody out there figuring anything out? It was a very nervous form of crowd sourcing, but it started to happen, and I did appreciate it. I started to make sure that I was including those types of feeds in my process, but also in my view. I needed to have those types of experiences vicarious, but I needed to know that people were kind of that we weren't in a post-apocalyptic dystopian reality, that people were still going out on recon, coming back and finding other people doing the same thing. So
what you said there was huge in terms of, people saying like, I'm not well. I'm not, I'm not excelling. I'm sinking, but there's no choice. I still need to wake up and do this every day. And my response to that was, I felt a bit of that here and there. I felt for me, it felt tired. I just felt tired of what was happening. And I think that goes with the things that I've said every time we had to shift from remote to face-to-face, from face-to-face to remote. I like to say that I would lose some part of myself. I had to let go. I had to let go of a part of myself in order to keep moving forward. And right now, I'm kind of, now that the school year's over, it's like major reflection time and considering what was it that I would let go of? Because at the time I would just feel like there was something missing from me, whether it be like the way I think or an attitude. Like I felt like the back and forth and keeping me in one piece was too heavy. It was too heavy, and I felt like it was bringing me down. So I had to let go of parts of me so I stay light enough forward.
Carrying yourself in pieces.
And even like cutting part of yourself off and just leaving it behind.
Damn. Yep.
I had to let go. And so for some of that, well, here's a good example. One bit that I had to let go of was some of my hope in returning to something more normal. I had to let go of that. And then one part was not wanting to go remote. I had to let go of that.
That was a big piece. I remember our conversations, and just to a credit, I know you remember them as well, but it's that I was aware of that in your process of just the way you're talking about it. Like, it's just like there's just no way. There's just no way. Like, this isn't. That's powerful. I think probably a lot of people were having that moment.
And then, there's the mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could write a blog post about the mask. When you'd hear it, I'd get to school. I'd be talking to you on the polo. I'd get to school and I'd say, okay, bro, I gotta go. And I think I'd always say, I gotta put this friggin' mask on and I gotta go. And
gear up.
The minute I put the mask on, I let go of, I just said to myself, okay, well, you're going to have to get comfortable with how it feels, and you don't like how it feels, and you don't like how it impedes this and that, but I can't go into work and not wear it. So, and I'm not going to go to work. And then, at the end, I was happy we weren't in the building. I had let go of wanting to have some normal in the building. I had come to a place where I was satisfied with the way I was planning the things I was going to teach my students and the way that they were going to practice their learning and demonstrate it to me. I got to a comfortable place where I let go of the way that I'd prefer it happen in the room to the way that it's going to happen online. And I have to say now that I'm glad that I'm glad that I had to let go of parts of me along the way, because it led me to a place where now when I look back on this year alone, I feel like I did the best I could, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I can say that there wasn't a time where I saw good and better and just chose good. I would go, okay, I'm surviving. That means I need to step it up and go better. I don't know where that came from, but I'm thankful that I was able to do that. I'm thankful that even with this gong show of a school year, that I participated in the Girls Who Game initiative, because it brought me light. And now that I look back on it, I'm so happy that I did it, because there were a group of kids who got to benefit from some extracurricular, and other kids, there was nothing going on that was extracurricular for them. So I'm glad that I could provide that to them, because they got a lot from it. So I'm looking back now and I remember people saying, you're nuts, don't do it. You don't, like, where are you going to find the time? Where are you going to find the energy? It's like, I'll find it because it's something that lights me up, right? It's the ludic or ludich loop.
Yeah.
There was enough, even though it was a lot of work, there was enough that I was getting out of it to keep me going. Yesterday when I was in my classroom tidying up, my co-coach came in and we were just chatting, because it's time now to return the Dell laptops to Microsoft. And so we're talking about the logistics of like gathering these computers and sending them back. And, I never really got to know my co-coach. Like, she works in the building. She's been there for 3 years, just like I have, but we don't really, she's a newer teacher. I'm not. She teaches intermediate. I don't. So there was never like a common thread, except for the use of tech and like working with these girls. So she came to my room to ask me some questions about the return of the tech. And as we started talking, she sat down, and I took that as a compliment. I was like, hey, if she's sitting down to chat, that's a good thing, because I never really got a marker that we were more than just co-coaches. Like, I mean, we're friendly, but could I call her a friend? I don't know. Anyway, she sat down, and for me, I took that as a sign of, okay, this is good. We're going to engage in a conversation. And it was great to hear her perspective about this year and how it went. And it sounded like she saw things in the same kind of light I did. The bonus for her was she was already the classroom teacher of these kids. So it's the only extra she had to put in was, okay, so I need to do some different things with these kids during this time that I wouldn't normally be doing with them at other times. But she said the same thing. She's really glad that she took advantage of that opportunity, because not only did it help her grow and give her some light to this school year, it helped those students grow in a number of different ways, which is what we're all here for.
Mm-hmm.
Ramona's talking about the mask. Ramona, and thanks for checking us out this morning, Ramona. She says the mask. Put it on every morning this year in the parking lot, walking to that big empty building every day and gearing up to give my kids sunshine in a very stormy year. 100%, Ramona. You work in special education. You were at school when people like me were not, right? So I would say our special education, our students with special education needs and support, they were they were back in the building, and that meant teachers like you and the staff who work with those students were back in the building. I was not. So yesterday, I'm rolling into school and I'm putting the mask on in the car, thinking, boy, I didn't miss this. But if I can shift, once I got in the building, I was working on my OSRs. We created a schedule, and I booked out my time so in elementary school, because this was fun talking to Chris about the OSRs. In elementary school, the classroom teachers are responsible for doing some work with the Ontario student records. And at the end of the year, it's filing your report cards into the OSRs, signing the OSR off, and making sure the OSR is in good order to proceed. So you can imagine there's a table, and on the table is everything I need. There's a stapler, there's pens, there's whiteout, there's our admin assistants are great. There's a piece of paper taped to it with the start date of the school year and the end date of the school year. Two very important things that you need to and people forget. Like, I don't always know the first day. I need to look at a calendar to actually remember what date it was, but it's all there. And then there's the schedule on. So this big table's got all this stuff.
I gotta say, this came out of just, I don't even know, like you sending me a polo talking about having to go in to do OSRs. I'm like, going to do OSRs, and it totally, dots were connected, because at secondary, and I don't think secondaries kind of process this entirely. At secondary, if you're, and I think probably I could be off on this, but I'm thinking more times than not at secondary, it's more the student success, the spec ed teachers, like guidance, probably admin, are a little bit more aware of the in and out and the flow of an OSR and the documentation that goes in there. Teachers that are teaching math, of course, they're going into OSRs. They're sort of checking up on students, gathering assessment data, but the actual, how the OSR is managed, the actual, the framework with that it's managed, I had never thought about. Even, like, I saw the signatures on the outside of the OSR. I never really thought to myself, that is the teacher at elementary each year going in and taking care of that, helping to care for that data. And this is where I'll go all the way back to faculty, I had to do an assignment where I had to interview and talk with the administrative assistant in guidance. And even at that time, that individual made it very clear, and this always kind of stuck with me, that they are the singular person responsible for quality assurance and data assurance in the OSRs. And I've carried that with me all the way along the way, never really questioning, well, who does that at elementary? Had never thought about it, like 16 years teaching. And I was like, all right. Yeah, we're not the, like, I just never considered that the other, who else is working on the OSRs there. So I loved hearing that. I really did. I also thought, like, man, that's a lot of work to do at the end of the year. Like, that is. I know. And you're just like, welcome to elementary, bro. I'm like, okay.
Well, okay. And it blows. I mean, it happens like normally we send the report cards home and we wait for the back part of the report card to come where the parent signs it and maybe leaves a comment or two.
Yeah.
You got to wait for those before you staple. So it's always last minute. And it's like everybody has to do it at the last minute. And pre-COVID,
There's a lot of that.
it's hilarious. You're like in this little space and you're like reaching over people and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I just hit you with my elbow, I'm just trying to get to the M's. You get, and it's, but now that COVID's here, it's like, well, we got to have a schedule. So I booked out an hour right at the beginning of the morning. I'm like, I'm just going to come in and do my OSRs. And it's funny, my wife was saying, so did you have to use your whole hour yesterday? She goes, I was able to knock mine out in 30 minutes. I'm like, well, no, I pretty much used most of the hour because where my OSR filing cabinets are in my school, it's the pathway to get to the mailboxes in the office. So that door's flying open every 2 seconds. Like, hey, Roland, how's it going? What's going on? Good to see you back. It's like, and even for the staff that I don't normally hang with, it's like, hey, dude, how you doing? How are things going? It's good to see you again. So it's literally, I'm signing my name and I look up, oh, hey, what's going on? So it's like right in the path of like everybody's coming through there. And because I'm there at the start of the morning, everybody's coming in at a certain time. If they're not in early, they're coming at a certain time. They're just hitting me. And PG, he comes in, Roland, what's going on? Talk to my boss. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, hey, when you're done your OSRs, can you help me? I need to move some tables. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And it's like, then the VP comes over to say hello. And it's like, oh my goodness, then I'm thinking, am I going to get these done in this hour? Because before I started, the next person after me came to get something and said, okay, I'll be back in an hour. So I could feel the stress of, like her time is next. Yeah. So I'm signing OSRs, I'm stapling report cards, I'm throwing them in, I'm making sure it's all good, putting it back in the thing. I'm all by myself and I still can't get it done. But bro, I would love to get a photo of post-COVID OSR time because, dude, I'm telling you, there's like four people, and it's like a comedy show. The fifth person comes and says, they look you up and down. They're like, I think I can still get in. I think I can still get to that drawer. And we're literally like, it looks like, what's that game? The game where you stand on the circles.
Oh, Twister.
It's Twister, OSR style, OSR
Nice.
version.
Nice.
With
social distancing, with the added multiplier of social distancing.
Well, let go. Okay, no,
whatever that is. Yeah,
it doesn't exist. Twister COVID style OSR doesn't exist. It can't happen. I'm talking about pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, it's like, oh, it's lunchtime. You run downstairs with your report cards. And it's hilarious. There's like four people and the doors are just opening and closing. So that's the other thing. It's like a video game where you have to make sure your head doesn't get knocked with one of the drawers opening. Drawers are opening and closing. People are saying, excuse me. And it's tight and it's hot because it's elementary school and there's no air conditioning, right? And so it's like tight, hot, doors don't get hit in the head. Don't be elbowing people in the face or the gut or the rear end, whatever.
It's like Survivor.
It is like, OSR style.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I was doing my OSRs and it was just awesome. It was awesome, the energy in the building from, like I said, I got to see everybody come in that day. Everybody went to check their mailbox. Everybody came to the office to say hi. So I was like, this is the bomb. I'm getting it all in. And then we had a social distance lunch outside. PG did some barbecue and we got our food and we were able to sit 2 meters away from another staff member and talk and eat. And that was awesome. I felt this air of like relaxation. Like it was nice to see everybody and just eat with the crew, just like the olden days.
Once upon a time.
2 years ago? What, 2 years ago?
Yeah. Once all those prompts in a galaxy. What's it? A long time ago in a galaxy
Far, far
far,
away.
far away. Yeah. You know, it was only recently. It was only recently that I made the connection that Star Wars is a futuristic story that technically is written in a historical sense.
What took you there, or what brought you to that place?
It just I just started thinking more deeply about the words. That's sort of the author telling you that this story you're about to encounter, don't get too caught up in its futuristic details, because this actually happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And I saw, and just probably other people out there like, yo, Clef, thanks for getting on the wagon. We realized that, like we realized that a long time ago. And you know, but yeah, it just occurred to me. I just thought that what a clever sort of trope in the actual scroll or scrawl, whatever they call that, of the, you know, put up at the beginning of every movie, just reminding you that the future that you're about to see hasn't actually existed yet. It doesn't exist in your time. This happened before. It's like watching found footage. The suggestion somehow, the movie, that everything that you see here, the spaceships, Jabba the Hutt, lasers, you know, lightsabers, this all happened in your past, but this is a futuristic society. That's so random, but yeah, that's what this podcast can be sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, random. Speaking of random, I
Do it. I hope you're going to say what you're going to say. I hope you're going to say what you're going to say. Say it. Say it.
I don't think it is what you think I'm going to say. I'm going to say that the next time we meet, it will be the first Decoded Summer School episode. And in between now and then is Canada Day.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to riff on Canada Day a little bit.
Yep.
So there's this whole thing. Are we going to cancel Canada Day? Is Canada Day going to be canceled? We're discovering more dead children.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm so bothered right now with this country not stepping up to do the right thing with the wrongs that have happened in the past. And now the box has been open, bro. We're on a path and we're not going back. And I think, unfortunately, we are going to discover a lot more negative stuff. And for me, two things for me. Number one, Albert Fong, Ontario high school science teacher. I know Bert. I think he's a great guy. He's really pushing back on social media with all.
Does he go by Bert? Does he?
I call him Bert. The people I know who talk to him call him Bert. So
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
I've always called him Bert, and he's been okay with it. But on Twitter, it's Albert Fong, and Bert's been pushing back. And one of the things he posted, I don't know if it was recent or not, because I was just checking out his feed. Somebody had this great idea to look at the Truth and Reconciliation report and invite people to grab one of the recommendations and then like own it and take action upon it, and then record a short video on Twitter saying which one they chose and why and what they're doing.
Oh, were you asking who asked that?
I'm just saying somebody did. And Bert, I was watching Bert choose one of the recommendations to take action upon or to own or to speak to.
Let me just, that's Bryson Negative.
Bryson Negative, okay.
Yeah, at Arnell Labrador. He really Bryson put out the challenge for people to take one and own it. Albert, I saw, jumped on quick He was in there
Yes.
quick. He was in like the top 5 individuals just ready to speak to it. So yeah, I
Can
just
you
wanted to make sure connect the dots.
can you put his tag, his Twitter tag in the comments, and then I'll push it out so anybody who's watching will see it pop up on our screen if you have a
Yeah,
second.
here it is. Yeah. And really, this, so there it is right there in the
Oh,
chat. So you saying that there's more to come is exactly more the darkness, more the sadness, more the death. This is also, I think, the shape of things. This is also the shape of things in many of the conversations that I've been able, not conversations, where the truth and the wisdom that's being shared in social media spaces, which I have access to. So as I listen and as I read, this is the fabric that we have to accept as part of this story. We can call it an emerging story, but it's also a living history, and it's also there's an I told you so in this, is that you're just queuing in now that there's many people that are aware both of First Nations background and also of the school's background, that know that these spaces exist, that know these children died, that know exactly where these spaces are. And, you know, people that are queuing in right now and sort of picking up the story and picking up the feeds, there's still shock and awe. How could this be Canada? I think it's a great question. I don't think I would sort of say is that in what ways is this Canada? I think that we accept that this is Canada. Had the conversation. Yes, Karen, my spouse, she put it to me. She's like, you know, we're just kind of in that kind of chilling mode at the end of the day. That's sort of like that weird kind of twilight between getting home from work and eating dinner. Like you're just kind of like sitting for a second, just kind of landing. Anybody that has, you know, you're out there with families or someone that you live with, you know, that space just between somewhere between the driveway and the actual plates hitting the table. There sometimes is those moments that it feels like the physics and the gravity is just off for a second. Any conversation could pop up. The by the ways pop up. The hey, have you heard? Did you see? As well as the how you doing and welcome home. And in that space, it popped up where she said, you know, what do you think? Like, do they cancel Canada Day? And I think as an event, we can't separate now the celebration from the sorrow. Like we just, well, some people can. I can't separate the celebration from the sorrow. I can't compartmentalize what that celebration can be away from individuals that just don't have any maybe interest in celebrating the same way, and for us to sort of say that Canada Day is for everyone. And you know, to ask, do we cancel Canada Day? Well, it's kind of it's a one-off move. You know, if it gets canceled this year, there's pivoting happening. There's jurisdictions that are saying they're not going to have events. There's jurisdictions that are saying they're going to sort of have an adjacent event, maybe have it, you know, just provided video, some sort of thing. There's other places that are going ahead with it. The disruption of Canada Day and to exist in that space strikes me as a really, it's important to stay in the space of this discomfort, so that whatever conversations need to happen, then leading to actions, then leading to change, then leading to more changes. It's the canceling of Canada Day feels, I don't know which could come first. I don't know which one is more powerful. The idea that we're building capacity and questioning, should we cancel Canada Day, or the possibility of it being canceled? Because I would say that 10 years ago, there'd be no, well, broad generalization. I don't know if 10 years ago, you could even have a conversation about canceling Canada Day. Like would it even get off the ground? You would definitely have people saying, "Yup, of course we should." I think social media and solid thought fuel and feeds has changed. We don't have the naivete or the innocence of sort of saying that everyone, the ignorance of saying that everyone should be proud of their country. Because if we're saying that everyone is included, then we have to look directly at the individuals that, yes, they were included, but only in a statistical manner. Because I'm sure those residential institutions believed, in whatever twisted way they believed, that they were also celebrating Canada Day. So we reconcile that. I don't want it to be simple. I don't think it is simple. I think me acknowledging that it's not simple. And I think just the act of even Karen and I having a conversation means that we're looking to sort of think it through, rethink it, come out in a different space. Both my children are aware. They've done the work at the level that's, locks it in for them. They've had the conversations in school. They're questioning. We haven't had the whole table family conversation yet. And I know they don't have any issues with fireworks, but they definitely have issues with the idea. They're having issues in working through the complexities of what Canada Day is. There's an adjacent connection here that my daughter has mentioned in passing, but really hasn't worked through completely. Her birthday's on Canada Day. Now, this isn't complicated, and I'm not about to say I am not about to say like, oh geez, how are we going to celebrate her birthday? It'll happen somehow. That birthday and the happening of that birthday. There's no zero sum here where whether we have to have the birthday on that day. Like, I don't see it as we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation on Canada Day and say, we're celebrating our birthday. What else do we have to think about even as we celebrate? It's the conversation. It's the conversation right now, and resisting making it anything less than complicated, that I deeply, deeply appreciate, and I know challenges the things that I still need to learn. But back to Bryson. Yeah, they, only because I don't know. But as Bryson has repeatedly represented there, the oversimplification of this is directly associated with colonial thinking. That this can be about one thing, and that somehow unity comes out of that. As long as we make this about everyone being celebrated in Canada, we'll be okay. I think I did it again. I think Bryson challenges that well. Bryson challenges that very well.
What Bryson did, and then what Bert did, hit me hard right at home. So let me tell you the story that is behind the hit. Bert records himself reading one of the recommendations, which is to ensure that newcomers to Canada, in preparing for their citizenship, are fully educated on what has happened to our Indigenous people and the residential schools, like the whole history. Like, here, you're coming to Canada, you want to be a Canadian. This is what this country has done to Indigenous people. This is what residential schools were. And this is this is the aftermath of the residential school experiment. I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right, but that is the gist of it.
The living history of it.
The living history of
the
it.
living history of it.
And
And
particularly not just what we've done to Indigenous people, but boom, hit the nail on the head,
Mhm.
residential schools. Like, say it and talk it and learn it. Now, bro, this connects me right back to my dad. And let me tell you why. Growing up, okay, and this burns me every time because it reminds me I need to do this every time I go see my mom, which I haven't seen my mom since all of this COVID, right? Haven't
Mhm.
seen my mom, haven't been to Ottawa to see my family. When I was younger, my father told me about the citizenship test. He shared with me the learnings of Canada that he studied in order to get his citizenship. And I'll never forget the shock the one day we're sitting there talking about Canada, and I think it had something to do with my schoolwork. And my dad starts talking about Saskatchewan like he's a pro. And I'm like, we're all looking at him like, what's happening here? Like, we don't understand. There's a disconnect. Why are you so knowledgeable about Saskatchewan? And I don't remember exactly what he was saying, but he was just talking. Like, it was his TED talk and it was all about Saskatchewan. And when he was done, I was like, Dad, how do you know that? He goes, for my citizenship test, when I was learning about Canada, what I needed to know for my test. And many years ago, after my dad had passed, and we were going through the photo albums in my mom's room and paperwork with my dad's paperwork, I stumbled across my dad's citizenship certificate.
Wow.
And it's really cool because it's got his name on it as a Canadian citizen. And then the background is like the Parliament buildings. It's a really cool, old school type of, like the paper was different. It's just really cool. It's a really cool artifact of my dad and his citizenship.
Artifactual.
Yeah,
Artifactual.
artifactual. And I remember seeing it and thinking, that's going to be mine one day. Like
Mm.
I'm taking that one day, or somebody's going to give that to me. When my dad died, I took all his watches. My
Mm.
dad was a watch guy, and I literally just got a box and started knocking all the watches in. I should bring it out one day for the podcast. I've got a
Yeah.
box of watches, and my sister said to me, here's a little bit of a tangent. My sister said to me one day, do you know where Dad's watches are? I'm like, yeah, they're right down the hall in my house. And she's like, you took them all? I'm like, I took them all. And I think she was like, can I have? And I'm like, nope, don't even go there. You're not taking any of the watches. Um, I've got my dad's watches, but I want that citizenship certificate. Anyway, it brought me back to my dad talking about Canada. And I
Mm.
wonder if my dad had learned about residential schools, if my dad had some deeper knowledge about the Indigenous people of this country
Mm.
and what's happened to them. I wonder if I'm sure my dad would have shared it with me. My dad, now that I'm talking about my dad he was, he loved equity. And I didn't get that. Like my dad,
You've never talked about that.
no, I've never
You've
had.
never included that, bro.
And we know how my dad rolled. My dad knew about the barriers and the obstacles in front of us, and he didn't cause a ruckus. He looked for a side street. He looked for a back alley to get to do what he needed to do without upsetting anybody and without having the system step on him. Um, and he passed that on to me. I guess it's good and it's bad, but my dad was my dad at the heart of my dad. It's funny, because coming from the Middle East, he had some thoughts and some ideas that were not modern at all. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast about the study skills coordinator at Carleton University who I met and befriended and who helped me write my papers and would read them over. And she was like my critical eye for my work. And then she became my boss when I worked at Carleton for a bit. And just she was the MC at my wedding, just an amazing person. Um, but she happened to be gay. And my father had some ideas about homosexuality, um, old school ideas about it being wrong, and just not open to like
Mhm.
people who were built that way. And I'll never and so he believed that, right? But here, let me show you the twist in my dad, the equity, the inclusion. At the end of the day, he never excluded anybody. He may have had these ideas, but at the end of the day, from my observations, he would say one thing, but he would not act it. He would always act in a way of compassion. I saw this many times when I would observe my father with other people. He wouldn't hammer them. He would be compassionate, even though his beliefs went against his the things he told me he believed didn't always gel with his actions in a good way. And I'll never forget. I got back one of my essays and I did really well, and my dad was so proud. And I said, "Well, you got to know that I get help." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, the study skills coordinator at Carleton, like, I meet with her and to talk about study skills and how to become a better university student. And she will read my rough drafts and she will give me suggestions." Um, and she will help me with my spelling and my grammar. Like she edits my work. She reads it and then provides me with feedback, and then I fix it up, and she keeps reading my drafts. And he's like, "For real?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what she gets paid to do. That's her job." And he's like, "That's friggin' awesome." And I remember one day I told him, I said, "And she's gay." And it was one of those things where there was no reason for me to tell him that, but I wanted to kind of like poke him a little bit and be like, "You say these things about homosexuals, but this person who is homosexual has no problem helping your son with his schoolwork, which then I share with you and you're very proud of. So how do you reconcile that, Dad? What do you do with that?" And I remember seeing a bit of a shift in my dad, because if you think about it, to that point in my life, I didn't have any friends who were homosexual that I knew of. Nobody had come out and said, "Hey, I know we're buds. I'm gay." Like, nobody, that didn't happen to me then. And this person, she had just recently come out. She was not proud and gay all her life. In fact, when I first met her, she had a boyfriend of many years. And then, upon further reflection and discernment of who she was, she realized or had come to peace with the fact that she was gay. And then I kind of threw it at him like, "Hey, so you speak highly of this person who helps me. You know this person's gay, right? So what do you do with that now, Dad?" And that was me being a bit of a university snot, right? Because here I am, privileged in university. You know, you ask 10 people that knew me back then if I was going to university, and I'd say 7 out of the 10 would say, "No way. He can't handle that. He's not built for that kind of learning," right? He's not, he doesn't have the intellect for that. Little do they know it's about hard work and grind and like finding something you're interested in, but that's a whole other story. And it was awesome because I saw my dad, I saw a shift. I saw the compassion. I saw the, "You're right. How can I be how can I not be appreciative? How can I dismiss a whole group of people when one of them sits with you and helps you, whether it's her job or not?" And then she became my friend, right? And I would say she's an important person in my life, but she's gay. And I saw the shift. I saw the compassion. He always had that. He was built a certain way. He grew up a certain way. And to this day, my mom is old school. She's from the Middle East and she's got some ideas that aren't going anywhere. But there's a compassion that exists. And my parents would not turn away from people who need their help. no matter who they are or what they are, as long as they've not brought harm to their family, as long as they've not brought harm to us, then they would be treated with dignity and respect. And so when Bert's chosen recommendation to own or to act upon or to speak out about really, really hit me hard, because my dad studied for that test and he spent time learning about this country, and I guarantee you that he didn't learn about what we've done to the Indigenous people. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in his schema. He didn't about Canada. And I feel like only I started learning more about Indigenous people when I went to Carleton to do my undergrad, because the really cool thing that I experienced in my arts degree was that um, a certain number of my arts courses, a certain number of courses at the University in Arts had to have a component around indigenous knowledge. So
Mhm.
in my law courses, in my psych courses, in my Canadian studies courses, there was always a section that was dedicated to the indigenous culture, indigenous ways of being in some way, some form. And I'll never forget being in Canadian studies and learning. Professor Rankin was her name, and learning about Canada's indigenous people. And I'm looking around like, I've been living here all my life. How come I don't know any of this?
Mhm.
Now, maybe they touched upon it in high school, but I don't remember. High school was a drag for me. Going to school every day was a drag. So I wasn't paying attention to someone talking to me about Indigenous people of Canada, if they ever
Mhm.
did. I was just happy I was there. And in a way, like, because if I'm there, that means I'm not going to get in shit from my dad for skipping school. But anyway, fast forward, I did skip school. I did get myself in trouble. Um, Long story short, I don't remember learning about Indigenous people in high school, but I do remember it slapping me in the face in university. I really do need to sit down with that document, the Truth and Reconciliation.
Mhm.
I have been reading it, but I just need to give it more attention. And I really need to take action and own some of those recommendations so that I can, for me, that's going to help me do a little bit better on Canada Day. Because to me,
Mhm.
Canada Day, as I've said before, is about celebrating my parents choosing this country, even though this mess that we find ourselves in, I still love this country. I still love that my parents chose this country.
Mhm.
And I'm proud to speak on the side of we need to fix this. Like, we need to do something to fix this. Just because my parents aren't from here
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I am somewhat responsible, at least to learn about it and to educate others about this country. And then how do we fix this, or not even fix, but how do we find a space in order to proceed? We can't be stuck here. We need to move forward. But how do we do it in a way that is right? Is right
Yeah.
by the Indigenous people. So I need to step up with that, because
The
I
c-
am I need to decode it. I am a member of this country, a
yeah. The
proud
the
member.
the calls to action are where we started with this combo. The calls to action are a very accessible start. They are. There's something. There's the there in some cases the language is academic, but it is accessible, it is decodable, it is something that you could start to talk about directly. um, Bryson did a great job of asking us to do that. Let's talk directly to this. Let's look at the calls to action. um, there's more than enough information out there, including a like an analytics website that show where the calls to action are in their development and which ones have been addressed, which ones are in process, which ones haven't been connected with. I would encourage anyone to go and start that. Like if individuals are looking to, go deep impact, well, sometimes that can be untenable. You sort of, some of the calls to action are going to take some learning, some resource gathering, some connection. Like you don't have automatic, not everybody necessarily would have automatic access to every single one of the calls to action where you can say, yeah, I fixed it. Like that's not, I don't think they're built that way. But the language of it, especially, I mean, the ones around education, speak clearly probably to the large percentage of the spaces that you and I exist in. And I think how you lens Canada Day will change. One of the few things that I really appreciated from that has kind of stuck with me from my PQP courses, there was a phrase that I came across, is that it's really important to act yourself into thinking, as opposed to what humans are kind of built for, which is think yourself into action. Because sometimes the eddies and the sort of spirals you get caught in about thinking too much without actually taking a step to gather new data to see, am I being effective? Am I being impactful? Am I somehow aligning? Am I able to align what I singularly think are my intentions with the impact in the communities that I hope to have impact in? Am I in alignment there? But the whole acting your way into thinking, for me, is I think maybe critical with the calls to action. Is you start to do something with it, and recognize that the work that you're doing, whatever work you find that you can connect to it, is that all you're entitled to is to do the work. You're not entitled to someone saying good job. You're not entitled to someone kind of being there to hold your hand in the work, like to sort of kind of bump you to keep going. You might find people like that, but I think it's important to recognize you're not entitled to that. You're not entitled to someone say, keep going, Clough, keep going. That type of feedback, again, offloads your burden of work to somebody else, if they have to be there to say, keep going, keep going, keep going. So there is a certain element of you move through the work of, and if we're using calls to action as a kind of a framework to move through any sort of equity work, there is a lot of I don't know if I'm on the right track right now. You might not know if you're on the right track. And I think that's why you touched on this a little bit, the fact that we can talk about should Canada Day exist on Canada Day, I think is a critical pivot point. And here's the thing, I have no doubt this conversation has been going on for a long time. Like, what the hell are we actually celebrating here? I think you and I played with this last year when we were just kind of a little bit more dipping our toes in this, and like, how do we actually feel about this? And the conversation is like, what are you celebrating? What are you celebrating when you say Happy Canada Day? Like, what do you see on the other side? And whether it's your coming to Canada story, or it's your parents' immigrant story, or it's just you sort of see Canada in shiny vibrancy and potential and opportunity, like whatever it is, let's put that all out there. And I think in some ways that if you sort of you're willing to put your version out there and still engage in the conversation afterwards, when someone says, well, have you considered? And you can somehow kind of bring into that conversation, the calls to action. You can bring into the conversation how Blacks are treated in Canada. You can bring into the conversation the fact that Pride Month occurs just prior to Canada Day. And what are we proud of in saying that we're Canadians? Like, I think these are the complexities, are not of there. Like, it's not the culminate. Canada Day should not be the culminating moment for these conversations. But the fact that we're seeing the ongoing histories at the same time that we're watching freaking fireworks, I think that's really, really, that's an important next move. And if you happen to lean over to someone at the middle of Canada, you're like, wow, those fireworks are beautiful. And you could find a way to say, hey, have you heard about the calls to action? This reminds me of the aha moment that I had when I was reading the calls to action as an educator. Maybe.
I'm glad that we got to talk about this. I think selfishly for me, it's important. It's important for me to say it out loud and to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to just work on making things better. Trying the reconciliation, right? I believe in reconciliation. It's part of my faith. We have a whole process for reconciliation. Isn't that interesting? So maybe we need to have a process here. And maybe we need to, well, not maybe, we need to bring people to the table to be part of this conversation, if they want to be part of this conversation. There's a lot cracking off, like, maybe I shouldn't even say this because we're an hour and 40 minutes in, but when I read on Twitter, it's time to cancel Catholic schools. It's time to shut them down. I understand that there's an argument for and against. I do. And I guess I lean on my experience. And for me, being in a Catholic school always brought me some value. And I didn't realize that until I was a student teacher. And my faculty placed me in a classroom. Actually, twice they placed me in the public school board in Ottawa. The first time I didn't say anything. I was just like, okay, I've been assigned my school, and I went, and it was a public school, and it was strange for me to not be able to talk about my faith with these young students that I was teaching. It was kindergarten, and it was just weird that I couldn't lean on any of that. And then when I went back to faculty, I said, that on my form I requested that I be placed in the Catholic school board, right? And they're like, really? And they look through and they're like, oh my goodness, we are so sorry. That's our mistake. And I said, well, it's like, I'm just happy that you've got me placed somewhere. Will I be placed in a Catholic school? And they're like, yeah, for sure. We've already arranged this and that. Now we've already arranged your first two placements. Let's make sure your last two are in a Catholic school. I said, okay. It was last two. So I did 2 in public, 2 in Catholic. And there was always something missing for me when I was in the public school. It was cool to see the diversity in the public school. I saw more of me in the public school, but I couldn't lean on me in the public school to teach these students the way that I felt was more normal for me. And then in the Catholic school, I don't think I saw more of me in terms of the diversity, but I did lean on my faith. And it helped me grow as a teacher. And I think, the goal is to move towards Christ. So I think I was able to do that with my students that I was working with. So when I see the calls to shut it down, we should not be funding, the public should not be funding Catholic schools, it does sting a little bit. I feel like, I don't know, it's brought me a lot of value, and it continues to bring me value. And I don't think it's as simple as, okay, let's just cut it out. Nothing's ever that simple anymore. You can't just go ahead and cut something out without causing ripple effects all over the place. I do think with some people it's a knee-jerk reaction. The Catholic Church has played a negative role in the residential school experiment. And I believe that they need to step up and they need to speak. They need to say what they did and that it was wrong and that they're going to be part of moving forward. So I do believe that, like, I'm saying that as a Catholic, I'm saying it needs to happen. Like, we need to do that. We are part of the problem, so we need to be part of the solution. And I don't even, solution is the wrong word, because there is no solution to what happened. But we can certainly acknowledge what we did as part of it, and then what we can do to move forward, and provide Indigenous people with what they want or need to feel like we are sorry for what we did. And so I see people, like, automatically they're like, yeah, shut it down. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. It's like, I just feel like it's a knee-jerk reaction. And there are some great arguments for why publicly funded Catholic school boards shouldn't exist. I can acknowledge that, but I tell you, for me, it's brought me a lot of value, and I love what I'm able to do in my role as a Catholic school educator. And that it's complicated. That's where I'm going to land there with that. But I do believe that the Catholic Church needs to step up. And I have seen some of the bishops in different parts of Canada step up and say, we are sorry. I'm sorry. This is horrendous. It needs to be dealt with. I've seen some bishops do that. The call for the Pope to do it is the big one, right? It's and I'm seeing more and more of it from outsiders and insiders. I'm seeing my fellow Catholic brothers and sisters, my Catholic folks, saying, you need to step up. There's a huge problem here. We can't just sit here and do nothing. So I don't know how it's going to play out, but needs to happen. I don't think, like, I'm not ashamed to be a Catholic educator. I'm not ashamed to believe in the Catholic faith. But I think that a lot of wrong has been done, and we need to deal with the wrong. We can't just pretend it didn't happen or just say sorry and walk away. There's more to it than that. And it's funny, the reason why I say all that is because of my Catholic faith and belief. Right? It's the gospel values and everything I've been taught about how to be that brings me to the place where I tell you we need to do something. We need to do a lot more than what we're doing. We need to step up. It's my faith that taught me to do that.
Yeah.
But it's my faith that's not standing up and saying more than we're sorry. It's a very interesting conflict in my brain.
I got a hat tip. Paulo de Buono, who's been out there, like,
he speaks up hard. Yeah.
He speaks up hard, but he also just the honesty, the risk, the vulnerability, the moments in his writing and the things that he shares where the pride and the politics and the faith and the conversations, the protest. This dude is, if I'm so far on the outside, but if I would say he's living the scripture and sort of using the language and the learning and the spirituality. It's not in harmony, but he's using it all and making sure, well, whether he's doing it intentionally or not, from my point of view, that I don't get to simplify his existence. I don't get to simplify what he represents in the school system, the Catholic school system. I don't get to simplify and say that it's about one thing just because it's more convenient for me to work on that one thing. The stuff that he's been involved with pushback from trustees and the public. Bryson's in that same space, people pushing back and trying to box and compartmentalize both of them saying, now you do the work. I've turned your head. I've turned your head because I've done a thing that's caught your attention. Now you got to do the work. Happy you're here. Happy you're here. But now you got to, there's the door. go do something. Go take some action. If you're feeling a thing, then act on a thing. Don't get too swept up in thinking that don't get too swept up in like thinking actually does anything. You got to go out and do something with the thinking. And like you're mentioning, Albert jumping into it. This is the action. These are the actions that slowly we started talking about our ability to peak out from COVID, and the individuals that were the doers and the leaders. It's not because they were adorned with the mantle. It's because they were some of the first few people that peeked out into what was going on outside of the classrooms and said, well, maybe I can try to do this thing. Some of them never came back. They never came back into the classrooms or back into the thinking, that silo that, school couldn't happen during school. Others came back and said, hey, here's some tools, something that we can use digitally. Here's how you can operate Google Meet. Here's how we can sort of, use HyperDocs. Like, here's some stuff. This is what I found. I'm heading out again. You might not see me for a while. And they never came back. They just kept on existing out there. Individuals like Bryson and Paulo remind me that an open door policy to the wisdom that they're offering doesn't mean I get to camp out in their house. It just means I get to check in, and then I have to go out and find something else to do. So I deeply appreciate both of them. And there's others. There's others that have sort of, for as I learn, what catches my attention is better for me. As I engage in conversation, I share a small part of the burden of risk. If I think it's too risky, then I make sure that it's actual risk and it's not just me thinking, oh, this is privilege saying, don't do it. Don't do it. You won't like what happens after this. And then I kind of go, okay, that's a good indicator that I should keep doing it. And I think that, people looking to start somewhere, it doesn't have to start with canceling Canada Day. But I think it can start with, as you're watching the fireworks, and if you're close enough to the person that's just like, wow, this is so beautiful. It's like, you know what else is beautiful? Starting to work on the calls to action. That's kind of beautiful too. In all its horrific origin, but it's kind of beautiful too to start working on that.
I totally agree with you. Chris is showing us the drawing he did today. It's a coffee cup with coffee being blasted in through the top, but there are holes in the bottom and the coffee's coming out of those holes as well. Very interesting, Chris. This is going to be Roland's summer of coffee. I think I'm going to play around with coffee this summer and see what I can learn.
I know you'll have leveled up if you get yourself like one of those little stovetop coffee makers. Maybe I'll gift you one.
On my fake birthday.
On your fake birthday, I'll send you some delicious espresso.
Oh, you mean espresso?
Si, senor.
You know, what kills me about that is I think we may have a coffee. My wife and I don't drink coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
easy. You now do. You do.
No, not yet. Not yet.
You don't have the t-shirt yet.
So
you don't have a Starbucks mug in your house necessarily. Or maybe you do. I don't know.
When my mom used to visit us more in Waterloo, she likes to wake up and have her Turkish coffee. And
I love Turkish coffee.
So you know what my mom did? I think the second or third time she came to visit us, she bought us a I'm going to call it an Arabic coffee setup, the little cups with the saucers. And
what's the pot called? What's the actual thing?
I don't know, but my mom bought it all for me so that
I think I had Greek coffee one time, and again, I don't know, but they called it a briki, And it's literally like a little pot that you cook the coffee in,
Mhm.
and you just wait for the grinds to kind of settle a little bit, and then you pour it off, and it's so good. So good.
So my mom bought the coffee and she just throw it in the freezer for the next time she'd come, and she bought me the whole set. And so when she'd come, she would make coffee for herself. What I need to do is the next time I'm at my mom's house, I need to watch her make it and then remember it. Knowing me, I'll probably make a video out of it, which is
Yep.
friggin' awesome because it'll live on forever.
Yep.
But the last time I was at home, I remember sitting in the kitchen, and my brother was getting ready for work, and he used a stereotypical coffee pot thing that you buy from Walmart. Like you just plug it in, it drips the water through this filter. I don't even know how it works. Okay.
Yeah, drip coffee. That's what it is. It's a drip. It's called a drip coffee machine.
Okay. So there you go. So then when it was done, he's made this killer breakfast and made his lunch for work. And then I see him pour the coffee into a cup and throw it in the freezer. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, I don't drink hot coffee. I drink it cold, but I want to cool it down as fast as I can. I remember just sitting there shaking my head. And now I'm the one buying iced coffee from McDonald's. So then I thought maybe I should get a coffee maker or find the one that's buried somewhere in the kitchen, figure out where to get the filters and the actual coffee. And then
I love you doing your old man face again, dude. Like just so you know, you won't have to recon too far. Like the stuff's all out there. I like you figure it out. Like it's gonna be a dude. You go to Walmart, go to Canadian Tire. Heck, go to your Metro, and all the stuff's there. Yeah, I just figured it out for you. There you go.
So filters fine. I don't know what kind of coffee in the bag to buy. I don't know what to buy. But anyway, so I get everything I need, and I could make my own iced coffee, and I love it. I love the idea of that. So that could be a summer project. So thanks for the coffee cup. I like that. And maybe I will become a coffee drinker.
You'll admit, I'm going to say you'll finally admit that you're a coffee drinker. You're already a coffee drinker.
But I'm not.
Maybe not maybe not the same as, let's say, me. But dude, cold coffee, it's in the fam. You're in the fam.
It's in the fam.
Yeah.
Well, that was season 4, episode 40. This is the last podcast, Decoded podcast for this school year.
Summer school next.
Next week we start summer school, so I guess it'd be season 4, episode 41, but summer school edition.
Yep.
Maybe I'll have something to share about my work. Maybe you'll have something to share about your work. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Yep.
And it'll be post Canada Day, so it'll be interesting to hear about what happened in your end.
Absolutely. Also, my daughter's birthday.
Madeline's birthday. Happy birthday to Madeline.
Yeah, I'll pass it along.
And I'm glad it's not a fake birthday. That's good.
It's real. It's real, bro.
Right on. We'll have a great last couple of days of
thanks, man.
School, technically, and we'll see you on the other end.
You too. Peace.
See ya.